The definition of Bacher is not whether he was by the Rebbe's minyan. The definition of Chassidish Bacher is how is he davening. It's not you were by the farbrengs. It's saying over the farbrengs. It's not, the being begashmi is close. It's being baruchni is close. It's passion. Being baruchni is close. And there is no gashmius other than to the extent of Ayol or 770, but it's not even there. To be close in 770, to be close by the Ayol, to be close to the Rebbe, you have to be close.
I'm Yossi Kamen. Welcome to Among Chassidim by Der Her, an ongoing farbrengen about life as a chassid, our vibrant connection with the Rebbe, and inspired living shaped by the way he teaches us each and every day. Rabbi Deren, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, it's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you. I am looking forward to a wonderful discussion, and if the people watching this ultimately get 10% of the enjoyment that they normally get out of an issue of a Der Her, then it will be an afternoon well spent.
Okay, very good. And I believe so far people are enjoying it. So, Be'ezus Hashem, I'm confident that this conversation will only continue that. Because Shmei Heilich Lefanav, Rabbi Deren is sought out all over the world to speak. And it's Shlichus that I'm right here in Yadal Damas in Stamford. So, Tainuk Tamidi Eini Tainuk, you know.
It's a Shlichus that I think is shared at least at a 50% level. And perhaps even the Shlichus may be even a bit greater at my end. But you know what, let's leave that for others to determine.
Okay, so there's many ways we can begin. I'm thinking that maybe we should start, let's start from the beginning and move on from there.
You always start from the beginning. The question is how you define the beginning. So,
in this case, I mean the beginning of your life.
Okay.
So, so we have. So I know you're born in Pittsburgh, right?
No, actually, I was actually born in Davenport, Iowa. The reason my parents lived there, of course, my father was a sheikhet in Davenport, Iowa, and we were there for about a year. Well, after I was born, and then we moved to Chicago for a year, where my sister was born, and then we moved to Pittsburgh, where the rest of my youth was spent.
So, in Davenport, Iowa, was that something that? So, what year were you born?
Tavshin Yud Aleph.
So were they living there? Is that something that the Friedrich Rebbe told them to do?
No, 1 second. They got married actually in Kislev Tavshin Yud. And yes, it was the Friedrich Rebbe who's... My mother wanted my father to sit and learn. My father was Goen Otzum. And
where's your father from?
My father is from the Shenchaya Bachim. My father was the youngest one of the group of Bachrim from the yeshiva in Otvotsk, Varsha, that escaped first to Vilna and then from Vilna through Russia to Shanghai, where they spent maybe 5 years, actually more than, because it was not until Tovshin Zion that they got visas. The bulk of them got visas to come to America. So my father that's basically, and then from there he was in 770. He learned 3 years.
So that's actually a few months ago we published published an article on the whole story of Shanghai. It's actually a very popular article. I'm not sure exactly if it's the historical aspect or the fact that many mishpachas are connected to that story. It was a very popular article. So your father became...
So if you take a look at the picture that you had there of all of the Bachrim together with Rav Ashkenazi, with the Bachrim sort of on tears, my father is at the very top. You can see a kid.
So where was he from in Poland?
The name of the town where he grew up was called Vishkova. Well, he was, till Bar Mitzvah. My father's father was Niskarev to Chabad by a chassid by the name of Chaim Meir Lis, who was also from that town, who actually went to Timchet Mimim in Lubavitch, and he came back to Vishkova, so he was Mekarev Maizeda.
So he was a Polish Yid that learned in Lubavitch?
Yes.
There weren't so many like that. Right?
Not at all. He was. I don't know if he's the only one. Certainly not the only one.
He's not the only one, because I know Falakan talks with this whole story with Yankele the Polish, which is written. He writes about it in his Shemus.
Yes. But there weren't a lot. Anyway, so he came back. Well, the whole Lieberman family that we have today that's Chaim Meir Lis's grandchildren, great-grandchildren. Chaim Meir Lieberman Olav Shalom, of course, his name is for his grandfather.
So somehow he ended up in Lubavitch, whatever his story is.
He ended up. He was actually. My grandfather was probably married already by then when he was Niskarev. Actually, when he came to the Friedrich Rebbe the first time, so the Rebbe told him he should not be Mishan Anivas Minhagim.
When he came where?
To the Friedrich Rebbe at Tvotsk, or it was probably the first time in Varsha, or maybe it was in Tvotsk. He came to Chidus, to the Friedrich Rebbe, and the Friedrich Rebbe told him, among other things, not to be Mishan his Minhagim. So on Shabbos, they have Zmiris. So my Zayda would sing the Zmiris quietly so the children shouldn't hear. Because they don't need this Pedish Minhagim.
So it's interesting. So that's, I think a lot of the Bachrim that learned in Poland in the Timchet Mimim, they were themselves got in this kind of, you're saying you have a unique story that your grandfather already, I guess, considered himself a chassid.
Yeah, my father was in a Tvotsk by the Friedrich Rebbe.
It's because
as a kid, he remembers being in the office and seeing Chatzah Fegen. He saw for the first time a typewriter, and it was like 6-7 years old in Poland. A typewriter was and Chatzah told him not to touch it. Now, my father eventually married Chatzah Fegen's niece. But at the time he didn't know. Although my mother asked him why he didn't mention to Chatzah that he was planning on marrying his niece.
So he learned in Tvotsk, your father?
Yes. No, actually my father learned not in Tvotsk, he learned in Varsha. My father was too young for Tvotsk. Tvotsk was the elder Talmidim. My father was still in Varsha in the Kittas. Actually, there's also lodge. There was also I guess what today would be called a Mesivta. But he would go to, he went with his father to Tvotsk for Yom Tov. That's what he was.
So he saw the Friedrich Rebbe many times throughout those years.
I don't think many in the sense that we saw the Rebbe many times. The Friedrich Rebbe, the Deren were altogether different then, and not anyone can go in at any time. But yes, he saw the Friedrich Rebbe.
So he came to America from Shanghai eventually, and he's still a Bacher.
See, he was still a Bacher. Shanghai, he spent those 5 years. The figure that was told to me was, on average, 18 hours a day of learning.
That was all the Bachrim? That was him?
I wasn't doing research about all of the Bachrim, but the way it was told to me, it seemed that... it was actually, the night times, he would spend with, and he was much older than him, but Chaim Meir Buket, and they would sit in the Eitzar Svarim library in the Mir Yeshiva, because that's where their Svarim were there. And they would sit literally a whole night long and learn
there. So then he came to America, and he's still a Bacher. So he learns in 770 in the yeshiva.
770, yeah. That was during the time of Gustman.
Yeshiva.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I heard from someone else. It was from Heiske Gansberg Olav Shalom. So he said, "Es ist nicht gewesen, kein ein Shiur seine." Was Chatzgelat auf dem nicht gehabt a Kasha a Bombe. A Shaila a Bombe.
So every year he had a Shaila.
But
a Bombe.
Like not nicht Stam. It was like a...
Mm-hmm. So, and he got married to your mother here in America.
Yes. Actually, my mother and her older brother, who later became a Shlichus, got married a week of each other. Yes, a week of each other. It could be that they were all together in Yechidus even, by the Frierdiker Rebbe. They were by.
So your mother and your.
It could be, because I'm not sure. I don't remember. I know that at that Yechidus, the Frierdiker Rebbe called my mother over to talk to her alone. And actually, it was she was able to understand. And there was at the time somebody would be I think Rabbi Simpson or something to translate them. So for people who didn't understand, it was difficult for the Rebbe to talk then. In any case, so he called her over. And what exactly he said, weiß ich nicht. Something to the effect of der Yetzirah is a klugenke, tut sich nicht in Levushim was machen, something along those lines. I don't recall exactly. But so my mother was the Chassan was stuck in Kislev, and the Rebbe was nostalgic at Shabbat, so it would be a month and a half later. So the Frierdiker Rebbe said my father should become a sheikhet.
Was the Frierdiker Rebbe involved with the shidduch? To your knowledge?
I don't know anything to that. Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay.
But Yadati is not a raya.
So the Frierdiker Rebbe told him to become a sheikhet in Iowa.
I don't know if he said Iowa, Lavdavka. That's where the Shlichus was. I mean.
So that seems to be an occupation that many people were being involved with then. We just wrote a whole article about the whole thing about Dublin in Ireland. That Chassidim were doing that. I guess that was.
I guess for America, where Eichlin Pekatlet and Kol Yem Mamish, it's so you need somebody to shech the animals.
Right. Okay. So, but that ultimately was not a long-term thing because they ended up moving.
No, they didn't live in Davenport. My father was a sheikh at Kol Yomov, and the Rebbe didn't. I mean, there was once they wanted to bring him as a Rosh Yeshiva in one of the new yeshivas they were opening, and the Rebbe said, "Mir nimmt nicht zu von der Art, wo die Schwert geschickt."
So the job, basically.
Yes, it would seem like it because, Pirushim weiß ich nicht, but that the Rebbe wanted him to stay there, das weiß ich mir sicher.
As a sheikhet.
Yeah.
And so why did he move to Chicago?
I'm talking Pittsburgh now. No, I mean from Davenport to Chicago. I don't know what occasioned the move from one place to the other. And I'm not sure, how that went. I can't imagine they would move without asking the Rebbe.
So they're living in Pittsburgh. So that's where you.
So, and Pittsburgh is where my mother, of course, grew up.
Because your Zayda Shalom Pleisner was sent to by the Frierdiker Rebbe
to start the yeshiva in Pittsburgh. Yeah.
So they started the yeshiva.
But the truth is that Motel Altain, Oliver Shalom, was as a bacher yet came to, so that he was the first one who came there to start gathering kids, but actually as a school. And
it's my understanding that the yeshivas that were started by the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Achay Tmim, all over, there was a little bit. It wasn't necessarily a long term. A lot of the people that stayed in Achay Tmim, that's what they did long term, but they were in various locations doing this.
Certainly, and especially as a bacher, that's there are obviously different conditions necessary for what a bacher needs and what's for a younger one needs. So yeah, I mean it was. I know
Hitchadava Groner was he was in Chicago also.
Chicago and Buffalo and Bridgeport.
He's not the only one that were in a few places.
Come out all of them.
Yeah.
The only one I know that never moved was my Zayda. That ever sent him in Tafshin base, and.
So your Zayda, Shalom Pleisner, he learned in Lubavitch, but he came to America early, right?
My Bubba and Zayda, they became a Chos and Kala in Russia.
So she's Chatzah Fegan's niece.
My Bubba is Chatzah Fegan's sister-in-law. Chatzah was married to my Bubba's sister, Zeitlin.
Okay.
In other words, labeled Zeitlin was her father, and so her sister was, and my brother was Aaron Laser, labeled Zeitlin. And Aaron Laser was her brother, her older brother, and she had a sister, Sasha, who was married to Chatzah, and my Bubba.
So you were Chas and Kala in Russia.
And then my Bubba had another sister was in Eretz Yisrael, so she was able to get a certificate to go to Eretz Yisrael. And my Zayda followed her a couple of months later, I believe. I don't think it was a very long time, but it was a period later. And they got married in Eretz Yisrael. And they were in Eretz Yisrael, and they were there in Peites when the Friedrich Rebbe came. My Zayda at the time was a sheikhet. My Zayda told the Rebbe, the Rebbe told my Zayda to go to America. And my Zayda, Bubba went to America, and then saw the Friedrich Rebbe again when the Friedrich came to America, the Peites Tzaddik.
So they followed the Friedrich Rebbe essentially.
Basically, in between, they were with the Rebbe, they were with the Friedrich Rebbe in Eretz Yisrael and in America with the first visit.
Is there a reason that we know why the Friedrich Rebbe said he should go to America?
Well, when the Rebbe came to America in Tafshin, my Zayda came to the Rebbe. They were living in Chicago at the time, and my Zayda was, I think, a shamish or something to take care of a shul, Bnei Reuven shul. And we came to the Friedrich Rebbe. The Friedrich Rebbe told him then, "Nicht auf dem habe ich dir geschickt in America," and he told him,
"He didn't.
I didn't send you to America to do that." And that's when he told him about Pittsburgh. I don't know exactly the timeline, what it was, but that's when it changed. So when the Friedrich Rebbe came to America, is when my Zayda.
So your mother was alive when the Friedrich Rebbe came to Eretz Yisrael?
No, just my two older uncles.
There's a story, that.
When actually my Zayda, the whole time that the Friedrich Rebbe was in Eretz Yisrael, so my Zayda just was with the Rebbe the whole time, mamsh the whole time. At one point, I believe it was my uncle, or maybe it was my shver, one of the two was sick, babies. So my Bubba went with him to Chatzah, her brother-in-law was there. I don't know if she actually went into the Rebbe or something, but the Chatzah either brought her in or whatever, and my Zayd was, I don't know exactly where it was at that time, but the whole time. This was the day before the Rebbe, or a couple of days before the Rebbe left Eretz Yisrael. When the Rebbe left Eretz Yisrael, so all the Chassidim, on the train, when my Zayda came to the Rebbe, so he asked him, "Was macht der Kind?" I said, didn't know anything. So the Rebbe understood what happened, and that's schmeichelt,
Uh-huh. So he wasn't around New York, the Kvias ever?
No. I don't know how often during the Shins my Zayda came to the Rebbe. That I don't know. But certainly not my mother. My uncle, my shver and my uncle were learning in Avodah.
Your uncle Label.
Yeah. We're learning in Avodah. Kids.
Because there was no yeshiva.
There was no shiva. There was no other place. There was no Techatumim. And when the Rebbe opened Techatumim, so they went over right away.
So your shver and your uncle, whatever, Label and Zalman are the first. Talmidim.
No, not mamish talmidim, because they were young then. Okay, so I don't know how it was with the kittas. Okay, when exactly that started. But from the first of that. Yeah.
But they were raised in America, essentially.
Not essentially, entirely. Oh, they were born in Eretz Yisrael, but yeah. Actually, my shver still has a copy of the passport that he had. It says born in Palestine.
Yeah.
An American passport, born in Palestine.
Born in Palestine. So, okay, so let's move on to Dir Alein. So you are born in Pittsburgh, and you attended the Achet Tmimim, the school that you say.
I attended Achet Tmimim from the time I was, I guess, 2 or 3, whenever kindergarten started, or nursery, till the end of 8th grade. Yeah.
And then for Yeshiva Ktana High School, Mesivta, whatever it's called, you went to New York?
Then I came to New York. To
Bedford and Dean?
Yeah, shortly before my bar mitzvah.
Did you stay in a dormitory?
Stayed in the dormitory. My mother went to Beis Yankov.
In New York?
In New York. This is already high school. But they didn't have a dormitory, so they had to board with families in Williamsburg to be able to go to Beis Yankov. When she came, she was the first class where they took even out of towners. The place wasn't yet ready for her. The first night she slept on a bench. That was I think the Bachram had Mesiris Nefesh.
But you didn't have to sleep on a bench in Bedford and Dean?
I didn't have to. And Bedford and Dean had a luxurious dormitory right in-house. It was 5-star.
So, and the kids in Bedford and Dean, whatever, the Bachram, they were Lubavitcher kids all?
Actually, no. I mean, I'm not going to give you percentages, but there were quite a few non-Lubavitcher kids even in high school in Mesivta, and certainly in the younger grades that came from non-Lubavitch families.
So how did it work? Because Rabbi Yisrael was taught you?
Rabbi Yisrael taught us.
So he taught the non-Lubavitcher kids also? Like, how does that work?
There was, there was.
So everyone had to speak Yiddish. Everyone spoke Yiddish in Bedford and Dean?
Or understood Yiddish. Remember, these kids were already, I mean, mostly children, of course, of survivors. Okay, so in that the houses were Yiddish was spoken. They knew Yiddish at least as well as I did. I mean,
right? Because you also
I heard Yiddish in the house, but I didn't speak Yiddish. I mean, it wasn't. Your
father didn't speak to you in Yiddish.
I definitely answered him in English.
Because your mother also is American, right?
Yes, my mother spoke to us in English, and my father, B'chalal, didn't speak a lot. Period. My father used to sit and learn. He was not. And even when he spoke very. From my father, the only time I really heard at length stories from my father would be after the Seder, Pesach after the Seder. In the beginning, I thought maybe it's the expereinces, but then I realized no, it was Pashut V'Galat Levincha.
So what would he tell you?
About how he grew up, and Meister was the Fidik Rebbe, and how he wasn't when he was a kid, and then yeshiva, and then
V'Galat Levincha. So you're in Bedford and Dean, and so you have the Mashpim, you have the Biel, who else was teaching you?
Rabbi Yisrael would teach those days, so there were not Mesivta. Rabbi Yisrael would teach, I believe it was already what was considered the Zal. Mesivta, there was Rabbi Shvei taught Chassidus then also. But from the regular, I don't even recall, the first one. Yeah, Rabbi Liss taught then also, Chassidus, and one or two others. The regular Seder Chassidus that was at night, but Braille taught, so that was already in Zal, okay, that would be after in the evening, okay, from 8 to 9:30 or whatever, like the Seder is now. So Rabbi Yisrael would teach the younger Kita from twice a week, and the older Kita 3 times a week. He would give a share.
And he also farbrengs for the Bachrim?
He used to farbrengen to Kislev. That was the farbrengen and Rabbi Yisrael. I mean, the Pagra would be not, but like a farbrengen, Adalis Shachar. That was twice I sat.
But I hear from other people, like Rabbi Yisrael taught them, and there was a mashpia. Is that
First of all, Rabbi Yisrael taught us. I mean,
right.
to sit by Rabbi Yisrael twice a week and sit by Rabbi Yisrael 3 times a week and get a share. I mean, I learned Derech Mitzvah by Rabbi Yisrael. Okay, I learned. Most actually was Derech Mitzvah was different. That's what he taught us. 1 year, one certain mitzvahs. Shesh Mitzvahs Fila. That so yeah, we learned that by Rabbi Yisrael. And then of course in 770, I mean, Rabbi Yisrael used to give shore, so it's not.
Mm-hmm. And what was the when you were a kid going backwards? When you were a kid
in
Pittsburgh, your father would bring you to the Rebbe often or not often, or what was the seder with that in those days?
My father used to go always Simchas Torah, Yud B'S Tammuz. I don't remember whether Yud Shvat, yes or no. As a kvias, okay.
So he would take you?
So Simchas Torah, he would take me. However, the first 2 years, I remember the first year was probably I was 9 or whatever, I was going to go to the Rebbe. So I was so excited, I got sick. The second year, Sukkot, punkt is Zelbega. So I ended up, the first time I went for Simchas Torah, I think I was already 11.
What year is that?
So it would have been Chav Aleph Chav Beis.
So you saw the Rebbe teacher Niggin?
I saw the Rebbe teacher. Yeah.
And you're 11 years old, so you're ready with the program. You could be there the whole time. So you remember Hakafis from Tafshach Chav Aleph?
Yeah.
Were there a lot of kids there?
I wasn't counting the kids. It was nothing. I didn't see the kids.
But you remember the Rebbe teaching Niggin well, like something.
I remember the Rebbe standing on something and teaching Niggin. I think the Rebbe stood by his farbrengen place, but he didn't sit down at all then. Okay, because it was just giving mashke and then the Niggin and giving mashke again.
Like people describe it was on a milk crate or on a table or on a bench. Like,
what I saw, I'm quite sure it was the Rebbe standing by his farbrengen place.
On the floor.
There was no on his farbrengen place where the Rebbe used to sit. But then stood.
On what?
On the platform. The Rebbe used to sit by the farbrengen on a platform.
So on top of that platform.
Yeah. As they gedenkt es mir. Again, I could be making a mistake. I'm not gonna. Because actually, one time in my mind, I was picturing the Rebbe standing on a box, on a milk crate. But then I realized it was because of a picture that I had seen. A drawing that I had seen that was just Meringue Fallen. Then I was tried to focus. Did you really see that? No, I remember I didn't.
Mm. So what was it like as a kid to come to the Rebbe? And
the first time I came to the Rebbe was actually a school trip. Like the 8th grade was going to it was a school trip. It was, I believe, for Purim.
So the first time you saw the Rebbe when you were 13?
The first time I saw the Rebbe, well, I saw as a child, but I don't remember. The first time I saw was Tafshin Chai. I was by the farbrengen Purim Tafshin Chai. No, I don't remember much about the farbrengen. Okay, I remember it was a pink. The hall, the paint was pink. I remember there's a lot of mirrors there. Honestly, okay, I was towards the end. I actually went into the Ezra's Noshim, and I was sitting on my aunt's lap. Okay, that what I remember. I was 7 years old, and yes, there were kids. I remember also.
Wait. You were 7 years old in 8th grade?
No.
You're talking about a different story. You're talking about before.
I was. It could be that was at that time. Yeah. No, this was earlier. It was also a class trip. But no, I went because there are certain advantages to having, not a lot, but having your mother as the principal. I mean, it's generally it was a down thing because, obviously you got no favors, but to go to the Rebbe, that was something. And then we were by 1 year, also a class trip, was by Lag Baimer, and we also went in the next day to Yechidus, the class. And I remember the Rebbe speaking in English to the class. I can't tell you that I remember what the Rebbe said, but I was astonished. Why would the Rebbe talk in English? The Rebbe, it's so, but so those were 2 times that I.
Was that a common thing that they would make a trip from Pittsburgh, to
I think
the Rebbe?
I think it was every year. I'm pretty sure. I remember that. I remember afterwards, that all of the 8th graders there was an assembly with all the 8th graders to tell over what was what the experience was like. And then I was asked to say, what was the most, impactful. I don't recall the words that were used. Took it, but what you saw. What was the thing that made the biggest impression on you? And I said, seeing the Rebbe cry. It was by the farbrengs. So the kids in the school obviously did not begin to understand what I was talking about. It was like they didn't. But I remember that dialogue probably because they didn't understand. And I was thinking, so why did I say it? It's like the Rebbe crying is not like us crying, but.
You're saying you had a Chassidish.
Derer is the word I think they're looking for. Yeah. I wouldn't define it as such, but yes, in retrospect, you must say that.
It also probably has to do with your upbringing and who your parents were and Zayda was. No,
I probably had something to do with it. I doubt it was because of the Chassidus I learned, or the Kekuta Diburim that I had read.
Did you hear from your Zayda or your parents these type of things, or they didn't talk about things like we do today?
Honestly, I would hear more stories about Chassidim than about Rebbe. And later, when I came to yeshiva and I started hearing all of these mices, and why didn't my parents tell me these stories? They obviously knew them, and it was like, what's... Until I chapzach, because my parents weren't trying to raise a Rebbe, they were trying to raise a chassid. So the stories they told were stories of chassidim.
There's something from the Rebbe about that. I forgot who it was too. The Rebbe told somebody to say, I forgot who it was too. The Rebbe told someone to say stories of chassidim. Because it's relatable. I'm saying it's something that you can achieve to. I forgot who it was too.
It's not to say they didn't tell stories of the Rebbeim up, but that was unusual. A story about the Rebbe was like.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so back to Bedford and Dean. So once you're at Bedford and Dean, you were by the Rebbe. How often? Like on Shabbos, weekday?
Yeah, no, every Shabbos. Shabbos was in, even though it was Bedford and Dean, but we're never in yeshiva on the weekends.
But where was the dormitory?
The dormitory was in Bedford and Dean, and Shabbos we used to be by families in Crown Heights.
So you had the same family?
The first 2 years I stayed by Reb Zalman Shimon, because Reb Shimon had been in Pittsburgh, because we were very close. So that and then the next 2 years, families of
Zalman Shimon was on Eastern Parkway the whole time?
Actually, at the time he was living on Lincoln Street. Like opposite the other side of 763.
So you're 14, 15, and that's about farbrengs. Like you're there the whole farbrengs the whole time. You have a place. Like
Yep. I had the place was like near the Aron Kodesh. Remember, this was the small shul, so the Aron Kodesh was
This is the first shul downstairs.
The first shul downstairs. Yeah.
It's near the Aron Kodesh.
The first farbrengen that I remember more of, a lot of was Yud Beis Tammuz farbrengen. That was already Chof Aleph that was still in the shalash, and I remember getting wet from somebody pushing up as I was coming in, pushing up the tarp and this and that. That farbrengen, I stood near my Zayda, who stood on like next to where Rashag used to sit. Behind Rashag. And at one point, the Rebbe called me over, and he gave me a piece of mezainis, and he told me to make a bracha while I was standing there.
This is.
You'd be Stamford.
And this is when you were a kid still.
Yeah, I was.
So Rebbe called you over.
Yeah, it wasn't far. I mean, I said l'chaim, so the Rebbe. I don't remember how the Rebbe motioned me, but to come over.
I mean, that's unusual, no?
I would think so. Again, I wasn't there so often to know how usual it was.
Was there anything like that when you were Bacher, back in
In the middle of a farbrengs, the Rebbe should call me over and give me a piece
I don't know, something.
That happened when I was a Shliach, but not when I was a Bacher.
So when you're Bacher, you're part of the crowd.
I was working to become part of the crowd. I can't even say that I was part of the crowd. I was like... it took a long while until I stood by a farbrengen and actually, for the most part, understood something of the farbrengen. Okay, the first, I'm not going to tell you how many years, but to be able to understand more than a couple of sentences was, and yes, I was very envious of those bachim that did understand and could understand.
So you had friends that were able, is it because they had more exposure from before, or I don't know?
Because they were more Chassidish.
You're not talking about the language. You're talking about
no. I'm talking about the understanding. Probably because they were more Chassidish, because they were bigger Masmidim, because they were,
But eventually, while you're learning at Bedford and Dean, at some point you already were able to pick up and be part of it and understand.
I remember the first sikha that the Rebbe said that I understood from the beginning till the end. You know, the Shaila, the Hezber, the Teretz, and the Hayirika, the Hiroa. It was a sikha on Parshas HaChedesh. I don't know if it was in Bay or it was in Mamish Parshas HaChedesh in Nissen. Das gedenk ich nicht. And I've looked for the sikha and haven't been able yet to find it. But it's like, I just... And the Rebbe talking about the child the Rebbe asked was why, Yisrael Meinel, why the first mitzvah is about that we're Meinel Levana Chaydish Hazeh, that why it's we have a lunar calendar, not a solar calendar, and there was masber. The difference between a lunar and a solar is that the lunar is constantly changing, and the sun is a constant, doesn't change, unchanging. And the Yid goes up, but if you're going up, sometimes you fall. And when you fall, you could think that the moon, even after it falls, it comes back. And it comes back more each time. I remember that, not being able to, certainly at the time, not understanding that, but it even comes back more. And that a person should know that... the first thing a Yid needs to know is that even if he falls, there's looking for fallen. You can. It's like almost a part of living is sometimes falling and knowing that you can pick yourself up and go higher and higher and higher. And I don't remember at the time what disaster I was facing or had just had or whatever. I failed a test. I knew I was going to fail, but I was like, in a state of mind of that my life is over already. I'm 14 years old, 50, whatever it was, and already, it's finished. And I remember standing there and thinking to myself, wow, I do have a life left. I remember walking home from, that's why I think that it was Parshas Bay, because I remember, I'm pretty sure it was one of those farbrengens where we went to Mincha to Ma'ariv in the Shabbos. And because I remember walking home at night, and seeing the Levana, another reason why it's probably not Parshas HaChedesh, and looking up and, wow, yeah, I still have a life ahead of me.
Is geen kleinigheid, failing a test?
No. My problem was that I didn't realize how much of this is geen kleinigheid, but yes, definitely, I never thought of it as a kleinigheid.
Among Chassidim is brought to you by Chassidische Der Herr. We live in a chaotic world, a world where for us Chassidim is a seinu, lei ra'inu, we do not have the ability to hear and see the Rebbe on a daily basis. Yet we know that the Rebbe is very much with us, and the Chassidus Chabad is alive and thriving more than ever before. One needs to only tap into it. Chassidus Deren provides you and your family with the tools necessary to tap into all of this. Whether it's the monthly magazine, the way it all began, whether it's Deren books, Deren online content, and so much more. Men, women, and children throughout the world benefit and use these tools on a daily basis. Whether it's children enjoying the children's magazine that comes along with the regular Deren, or enjoying the children's podcast, whether it's Bachrim in yeshivas receiving the Deren, whether it's girls in high schools enjoying their hair club in their local high school. People all over the world and from all walks of life enjoy and utilize these tools and take advantage of it. If you're not already subscribed to the Deren monthly magazine, do so today at derher.org. That's derher.org. Deren is a dynamic organization which is committed to continue providing these tools, grow on a constant basis, and do all that we can to help this effort. Baruch Hashem, it takes a lot of resources and finances to make this all happen. You can be part of Deren through your financial support as well, through visiting our website derher.org, or through contacting us to setting up a meeting. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the podcast. So you're experiencing, as a bacher, the effect of what you're hearing from the Rebbe. It's special. I don't know if there's many adults.
In those days, we didn't even think of ourselves. I don't know. I think of myself, not of ourselves, but as bachrim. Bachrim are ältere bachrim. Okay, we were kids. I mean, Mesifti, you're a kid. You're not a bacher. In my head, at least, in any case, you want to be a bacher. You got to imitate bachrim. You have to, but you knew you wanted to imitate bachrim, and you knew this is pasnisht if you want to be a pnimi, but a chitzin definitely, is imitates ältere bachrim. Okay, it's ain't a mess. Until you become a Chassidische Bacher, if you're going to do that imitating. So, worse things to imitate.
And in those years, the Bachrim your age had Yichidus for their birthday, right? You had Yichidus?
I did, yeah. Without going into the entire story, because it's farbrengs.
Some people say this is a farbrengs.
I understand. Okay, but as long as this is iced tea and not mashke, it's going to be a podcast.
No one has to know.
With the Rebbe, to be able to gave me a very difficult job. Basically, that I should undertake lilmeid hasmada b'shkida rabba b'teikif yachlit b'teikif under. This was an answer in writing. That's what Rebbe said to me. B'teikif yachlit lilmeid hasmada b'shkida rabba b'zman sheyispane. B'teikif underlined twice. Hasmada shkida rabba, rabba underlined once. To make with great determination to learn with intense effort and constancy. And it was like, can I say I'm going to?
This was an answer on a question that you had.
Right, yes.
And this is like a tanai?
Yes.
That Rebbe gave you?
Yeah. And it was like, I couldn't. But I knew I had to. And I asked again. And the Rebbe said, I answered you already. Like, are you going to do it or not? I remember the feelings at the time. It was so, the first, I answered you already. Like, but this was almost a year ago. How does the Rebbe, like, honestly, I wasn't even sure if the Rebbe knew who I was at that age. But the Rebbe is telling me exactly, I told you already. Why are you asking me again? And the Rebbe said, Vestas nicht. Are you going to do it or not? Like, why are you asking again? You're the one that has to answer, not me. And the Rebbe was looking down and waiting for me to answer, yes or no.
So the first time was in B'Ksav, and the
B'Ksav,
second time is in
right.
Yechidus.
Yeah. And the Rebbe was looking down, and he's waiting for me to answer. And I was like, I stood there. It felt like 2 hours. I mean, I didn't, to talk to the Rebbe and to answer a question like this. I mean, it was like, and until finally with my last keiches almost, I managed almost imperceptibly to nod my head, just like, and the Rebbe's looking down. And as soon as I moved my head a drop, the Rebbe looked up. I don't know if it was with a smile. I don't remember a smile, but I do remember it was a lichtig upon him, a very. And he said to me, "Nu, du wirst gedenken, du hast mir zugesagt, wirst du sicher keinen Eis folgen. If you'll just remember that you promised me, you'll certainly be able to do it." And at that point, it was like, the Rebbe is making a deal with me? Like, who am I? And the Rebbe is now saying, there's like we have a transaction going on here. You promised me, and I'll give you keiches. You'll be able to do it. That promise is going to make you able to do it. Now, what does it mean? Why would the promise make me able to do it? Because the knowledge, here's where the Rebbe is investing in this partnership. No, but the knowledge that if I don't do it, the Rebbe will be disappointed, and if I do it, the Rebbe will be happy. In other words, the Rebbe is saying, you are now someone who's important to me. And I couldn't, me? I don't remember how I don't remember nothing else of what the Rebbe said. I don't remember how I left the room. I was so, I guess you might say, I've said it before, that's when I began to understand that the definition of a chassid is not someone who believes in a Rebbe. You don't have to be a chassid to believe in the Rebbe. Okay? You have to have a little bit of brains and you believe in the Rebbe. A chassid is somebody who recognizes that the Rebbe believes in them and he acts on that belief. And that's no, I'm not going to answer your question. Did I or didn't I? But that's irrelevant.
This feeling you had then, were you describing? You think
that was right. The becoming a chassid? No, it's already, as it developed. I mean, at the time I just from that point on, I realized that my relationship with the Rebbe is not a theoretical one, and it's not a communal one. It's a personal one. It's a personal relationship that is, and everything that followed, it was based on that understanding, recognition, that a chassid is not one of chassidim. A chassid is a chassid. A Rebbe is not a Rebbe of chassidim, of Klal Yisrael. He is all of that, but he's my Rebbe. And I owe him. He gives me, but I owe him. And I owe him everything.
Interesting. So this was an important point that?
It was a paradigm shift, let me call it that, to the extent that 14 or 15-year-olds have paradigms, but certainly it's the one with which I try to live.
Okay, so let's continue with this. Now that we have that in mind, we understand, the way you're viewing things. Then, so we can continue. Ultimately, I believe that. So you're Bedford Dean for.
So I was
X
in
amount of
Bedford indeed
years.
for 4 years. I'm sorry, 6 years. Actually, not. It was 5 because I skipped a grade. I skipped 2 grades. So I was there 4 years. And then from there we went to Newark, which is today Morristown, but then was Newark.
That was the Seder then?
Yeah. So it's certainly from Bedford is the next step.
Because you're too young for 770.
Yeah. So it was 2 years in Newark, Rabbi Yisrael.
The Sofima was in Newark.
Yeah.
And Melech was in Newark?
And Melech, actually the first year, so Rabbi Steinberg was also there. It was the Moshiach, and then it came Shlichus. And then after 2 years in Newark, I guess I was afraid of 770, in terms of learning. That was just. I'm not going to defend the decision, although, of course, I asked it, but and it was like without I didn't get an ambiguous answer. I got a very.
What did you ask another?
If I should go to Eretz Yisrael to learn.
So you're saying you're not going to defend it?
Maybe I shouldn't. But I actually went away from the Rebbe for 2 years. Okay, instead of spending the next 2 years in 770, I spent the next 2 years.
So in hindsight, I'm asking.
People say hindsight is always 20/20. I don't necessarily feel that way. In hindsight, I regret not being by all those farbrengs. In hindsight, how do I know that I would have actually been the Bachar I should have been in 770 with all of the temptations for wasting time that exists there? And that, Baruch Hashem, and I didn't necessarily have, I didn't have those types of temptations. I hope that because of that I was able to learn Basmod or Shkider Rabbi. But it was, so I'm not going to say, I regret part of it. I don't regret the decision. And I was in Yechidus before I went to Eretz Yisrael. After Yom Tov, I was in Yechidus again. So first thing. But it was right before I went. And the Rebbe said to me, among the Rachas, the Rebbe said to me, Tainesiya in Eretz, Tainesiya in Taimchetim. Remember, you're not going to Eretz Yisrael, you're going to Tikkun. And so it should be Batzlach.
When you wrote to the Rebbe, there's options, you just asked the Rebbe if you should learn it, so.
Yeah, the options you went to go to 7.
Yeah. Oh, you wrote both? Mm-hmm. Okay. So you went to Eretz Yisrael to Chabad. So this is. So this is post. No, so Shem Chaim is still there.
Yeah.
So you live by Shem Chaim.
I would say if I have a near Shemayim, and I'm not going to say I have a near Shemayim, but to the extent that I may have some near Shemayim, it's because of Shem Chaim.
So what was happening in Eretz Yisrael, Shem Chaim, with the Bachar, what was going on there?
To learn the David and the farbrengs.
So what was their not like when you saw that Eretz Yisrael like a Bachar, they were like your speed, or they were like they're from a different world? Like,
there were those that were my speeds, and there were those
I mean, like you grew up by the Rebbe for years. You know what's going on. What was like the Eretz Yisrael like a Bachar like?
I'm going to give you a Hagdorah that I think is very important to understand. I am firmly of the opinion that the Bachrim today are far better, stehen asach hecher, than the Bachrim in my time, and Bechlal, the Bachrim up until Gimel Tammuz. In other words, the Bachrim post Gimel Tammuz in a clothes are far more chassidish, emes-dike, pnimis-dike, things that we strived for. By them, it seems second nature almost. And the reason that, obviously it's counterintuitive, they grew up, didn't see the Rebbe, they weren't by the Rebbe, some of their parents weren't by the Rebbe, and never were by farbrengs, never in Yechidus, never by dollars, never davened by the Rebbe, never, and yet, give a cook. And you would think, and certainly that's what we thought on Dalet Tammuz, that it's over. If you're not by the Rebbe's farbrengen, and you're not by the Rebbe's kashul bracha, and you're not by the Rebbe's davening, it's certainly not by the Rebbe's yechidus or even answers. So how can you be a chassid? And give a cook, chassidim, mekusharim, and even more than before. Why is it? And again, there's no such thing as a rule without an exception, or even many exceptions, but as a rule. When I was a bocher, in our time, before Tafshin Nundalet, the definition of a chassidish bocher began with, he's not going to miss a farbrengen. He's not going to miss even a davening if it's possible. Certainly not a Yom Tiv. Kal v'chemer b'bnei kal v'chemer asimchas Torah, or Ayid Shvat, and later Yud Aleph Nisan. These are and the more that younger man, I'm talking about Bocher, more that kid was attached to that, to running for mincha on a weekday, because how can I miss mincha? Even to run away from Holy Torah because there's going to be a sicha, even though you can hear the sicha in Holy Torah too, but with haste, it's like out. Maybe there's going to be a sicha. That's a chassidish bocher. Problem, of course, is what was he thinking by the farbrengen? What was he thinking by the sicha? Tak davened by the Rebbe, and what kind of davening did he daven by the Rebbe? The only one that knew that was the bocher. No one else. That did not go into the equation of how others defined that bocher as chassidish or not chassidish, because of the base. Today you don't have any of that. The definition of bocher is not whether he was by the Rebbe's minyan. The definition of chassidish bocher is how was he davening. It's not you were by the farbrengen. It's saying over the farbrengen. It's not the being begashmi is close. It's being baruchni is close. It's pashut, being baruchni is close. And there is no gashmius other than to the extent of Ayol or 770, but it's not even there. To be close in 770, to be close by the Ayol, to be close to the Rebbe, you have to be close. And you know it. You can't fool yourself into thinking, just because I came to the Ayol, and what are you thinking about it? You know that. So automatically it becomes an entire, and of course was haste not to long for the days of the farbrengen. But that longing, part of that longing is because then it's so much easier. I just got to show up to the farbrengen. I did it. Today, I can just show up to the video. I have to actually listen and understand and chazer over and live by it, which is a whole different...
I relate very much to what you're saying. In my times, I was a bacher not so long ago, over a decade ago, but in the big scheme of things, it's not so long ago.
You're one of the bacher I'm talking about.
Okay. It's interesting that I noticed that, like you're saying, that you couldn't have a very chassidish bacher, especially in the later years, that might have been maybe farbrengs, but didn't understand. It wasn't, you can't tell you what the Rebbe said. And after when I was a bacher, if you're a chassidish bacher, if you watch the farbrengs, you have to be able to repeat it to your friend and talk about it.
You don't go to a video
right.
to say I was by the video.
Right.
Okay? I mean, the only reason you go to the video is to listen, to understand. And, to the extent that now you live by the Hiras, that the Rebbe said about the farbrengs, okay, that's where things become a little bit more difficult, a lot more difficult, and a bit more complicated. Im kol zeh, I mean, it's like...
So it's a lot harder.
Of course. Oh, up until the Hira part. Up until the Hira, okay. Because if you're by the farbrengs and just stood there, then the Hiras are not going to be on your head in the same way that when you were by the farbrengs that you were listening to and that you were and internalizing. Okay, and then when you walk away from that, you are going to be acting differently. There's no getting away from it.
You see, the Hira part was easier before.
Forget.
Oh, now it's easier.
Why? It's easier. I don't mean that the actual work is easier, but easier to make the achlota to actually do the work.
So I think the galus today is the galus part is like the Beis Hamikdash. Everyone came leaders with their eyes, you just have to show up. And I think the galus today, post Gimel Tammuz is when you access it, it's a lot deeper, but you have to. It's not as accessible as just showing up. You can't just show up because if you just walk into 770,
I see it's like those in the last mimer that the Rebbe gave out, that the Zerbrochenkeit of the fact that the Elkus is behester. And that even when we live in Begashmias and Baruchnias, okay, in a beautiful world with easy, and it helps you to do all those things. Und im kol zeh azay zu brochen from the galus, okay, that causes of galus, the idea of galus, okay, we don't feel exiled per se, Begashmias. Okay, I mean, anybody who wants to go to Israel. But the galus that we're in, that galus, that kosis, is bigger even than the kosis of Yimei Haman or that where it was even Begashmis. Those aren't words that we heard before Gimel Tammuz or before Gimel Tammuz. Those were the last mamish. It's the end of the mimer. It's that part of the mimer. There's no question. That's why it's the Rebbe's tzavah. Why the tzavah and tzavah is not just nice words put together. That is the Rebbe's tzavah, and that's exactly what the Rebbe is saying. Look at this zman that we're in right now. The tzibrochenkait, the kosis that were pashut in Golos, and that pashut there was a Gimel Tammuz. That's the highest type of kosis. That's not getting Moshiach.
Okay. Sounds like a plan. So back to, you got into this, we had mentioned about the Bachram and Eretz Yisrael.
So now we come to the Bachram and Eretz Yisrael. And you ask me, who's a Chassidish Bachar? The same kind of Chassidish. So no, they didn't know what the Rebbe said last week. Okay. Or even 2 weeks ago. And they didn't know what's going on in 770 like I know what's going on in 770. They were certainly never in Yechidus. They were never by the Rebbe. Many of them. Most of them. The vast majority of them. But they were Chassidish Bachar. They lived the Rebbe. But their living the Rebbe was actually a more pneumistic living the Rebbe. Then, okay, because it was living the Rebbe, learning the Rebbe's Torah. It's acting on the Rebbe's heroes, okay? The Rebbe said to go on Miftzayim in Eretz Yisrael was more Indian that is everybody went and everybody did, and it was like this galept, in those days was basically film, okay? But much more than in America, not much more than the Bachram that was sitting by the Rebbe. Why? Because in Eretz Yisrael, that was the biggest kesher to the Rebbe, okay? Miftzayim was the kesher to the Rebbe. It was the Rebbe's thing. You know, you to do this. The learning Chassidus, Alter Rebbe also went on to learn Chassidus, okay? But with Mitzvah film.
It's interesting. So you saw like a deeper, whatever, different types of discussions.
Am I telling you that that's exactly the way I processed it at the time? I doubt it. But, I mean, it's certainly subconsciously that was, I looked at them as Shabachim. I mean, it's certainly not less than me, and for the most part more than me.
Okay. Maybe you can tell me a little bit about Rosh Chaim Kesselman.
I can tell you that the Rebbe once said, discussing the Bachrim, says, what can I do? I only have one Shlem Chaim to be able to send. I can't send all of them. Okay, so like everything else is not that. Now, Shlem Chaim, you could see that Shlem Chaim lived the Bachrim. The Bachrim were his life. And he knew every Bachar. And but he was a chassid. I mean, a chassid that lived chassid. Okay, the chassid that one of the things he said at the clock. Okay, Sof Yomov in the hospital, and he wasn't. They had to sit up, you know. So they had like a couple of pillows behind him, so he should be able to become with it. And there was a clock to him and said, like, so many years I didn't sleep on a pillow. Skafia. So now they give me, like it's like, look what happened to me. It was like, you know, that kind of. He didn't make this announcement. He said obviously to someone, but you know, to even have such a music, and he. I heard the Skafia before. That's most of the Gani, but das ist nicht gemeint. Bei Shlem Chaim, Skafia.
Ich verbringe about it.
Ach.
But Gashmis is Skafia.
Yeah. Gashmis is Skafia. I mean, obviously, okay, you have the Skafia in your Ruchnisdik in your Vesich, but what that even looks like. But a Bacher once was buying by the Shabbos table, and there was a bottle of soda on the table, and the Bacher didn't take it, and he, by Miras and Shpamik and Skafia, he made him drink the soda. Okay, so it's like it's nicht gemeint that as a Amazon by them. Okay, you know that you authentically, not that it should be a. Shlem Chaim once was being retired that he'd seen, maybe it was not because of luck, I don't know what he saw, but a Bacher eating a sandwich, and he's retired, how the Bacher, stup, I can't outside, like, what's he upset about? That his mouth can't open wide enough to be able to push the whole sandwich in at the same time, and he has to, and the way he was retired, like it was, the Elva could catch it, but I have to tell you, I didn't stop eating sandwiches, but I don't have the same feel for a sandwich. When I eat it, there's always that, you know, little like, what are you doing?
Guilt. Interesting. But you never heard the Shem Hebrew?
No. Honestly, no. I mean, I never heard anything from Rabbi Yisrael that would in the slightest way imply that it was not important or not a chelik ikri of Chassidus, okay? It wasn't, there was no quote and negative towards, but that wasn't what Rabbi Yisrael was. Rabbi Yisrael was the Rebbe. Rabbi Yisrael was the Rebbe was the honesty, okay? Rebbe is the authenticity. Pneumonia is not nicht chetzenisch gestick, which is, it's like, it's easy to act like you have a skafia when you don't. That's the downside of skafia. In other words, you can push something away. I heard from a melech one time. He said like this. He said, you have two bachim in yeshiva. In the same yeshiva. One bacher says it's a good yeshiva, the other bacher in the same yeshiva, the same chavim, it's a bad yeshiva. How is it possible? So it's very possible. There are two of them are sitting opposite each other by supper. And one of them is not eating half the food on the plate because it's supposed to be not good food to give yeshiva. The other side is sitting a bacher, and he doesn't eat half the food on his plate because he's probably scuffy, very much like the They see the other. So he looks over and sees that this bacher is probably scuffy. It's a good yeshiva. Other bacher also have scuffy. This was looking over and says he also doesn't like the food. Okay, this is a lousy place. I'm not only my grove, but everybody's grove. So it's like but the actions don't actually show what's happening. And Chassid is not somebody who lives. My father-in-law, when he was a bocher, he said he shouldn't say it, but I heard it from him, not from others. Okay, so I'll say it. So my Zayda came once to 770, early in the morning. Those days there was no planes. There was planes, but you didn't go on a plane. And so he's sitting on a train the whole night. And then a subway to 770, and he comes into the Zal at 7:30 in the morning, and he's not there. My shirt is not there. He's not sitting and learning there.
Who came?
My Zayda.
Oh, you Zayda.
My Zayda comes into the Zal. Comes into 770 and
Shver is absent.
Zalman and Shlach. Somebody says he's probably still in the dormitory. So he walked down the street. The dormitory, there was an apartment on the corner of Troy, I think. Whatever. He walks in, make sure it's like. He's doing what a bacher does, when you go to sleep late, okay? And he says to him, what's it sein mit there? What's going to be with you? Just eiswachsen he was looking for the worst thing you could say. Just eiswachsen a chitzen. You'll grow up to be a chitzen if you don't, with this kind of behavior. There's nothing worse than that. It's not just that this is what my Zayda felt. He was talking to his bchar about in a way that he wanted him to understand how terrible it is. So at least I'll call upon him from one perspective or another. My shver should have been able to relate to that because that's what you're supposed to be. A primi, not a chitzin. Okay, and if you're a chitzin, it's nothing.
And okay. So Shamachaim also used to talk about Avodah Tefillah?
Just like to talk about it. It's not just talk about it. It's just, first of all, he used to daven. That's the first. And without a question about davening, how to daven and how to chassidus fahren daven and amazol trachten chassidus fahren daven. But it was, davening. Okay. I remember I was there one year, Rosh Hashanah. And I remember a younger man comes in, Rosh Hashanah by night. A younger man from Chabad. And he sits down to daven Ma'ariv. And he was crying for hours. And if I would have seen somebody like that in 770, God, something like that in 770, you would get towels thrown at you. And here it was normal. In others, that wasn't normal that you saw a lot of it, but the presumption was not difficult to make that he's for real. I don't know what goes on in anybody's heart, barely my own. But that was the atmosphere there. It was an atmosphere where some crying for hours, but on the other hand, every night is Rosh Hashanah, the first night of Rosh Hashanah. But the notion to David, he would talk about how it's difficult. He davens longer, and just during the week, and then he comes downstairs and there's no more breakfast left. He's left there. That's like, it's a double thing. Sai is feeling bad for the Bocher davens and has no breakfast, and he's also feeling upset that all of the other Bocherim had a good breakfast. Why? Because they didn't daven. Sai they didn't daven, and Sai they ate a good breakfast. It was that was the atmosphere. Did everybody daven? Did I daven? But the davening was in the air. Davening was part of the curriculum. It was a major part of the curriculum. Major part of the program, let me say. It's hard to make a curriculum for davening other than just learning chassidus, but and he would kochzach. There was a bacher, Baal Tshuva. His name was Mitzion. Those that live in my days know which from Mitzion. It's going to get after me. It's sein gesund und stark. Arichas yom shem tevis no less achos today. It was more than he was then. And he used to tracht since Fardaven. And Shlomo Chaim said over to the Rebbe in Chidus, by Shvat HaGodol when he came, he said, the Rebbe like picked up his hand and says, "Vos, Benze tracht chassidus, Benze tracht chassidus." Benze, yeah. Shlomo Chaim called me Benze. But, it's like, and Shlomo Chaim's like the kochen in them later,
He spoke about it.
Yeah, how do I hear it? I mean, obviously, but more than once, maybe he didn't when the Bocher was actually there. I remember once when he did, when the Bocher was there, and how the Bocher was like so, I can't imagine Shlomo Chaim want to make him, but Benson Tachsidis, it was obviously showing the tire cut that it has by the Rebbe. And this was still in the days when there was not unusual to have that undercurrent of, but Rebbe Shlomo Chaim was not Makusha, because Rebbe Chaim never came to the Rebbe. I told you, he never came to the Rebbe.
The guys with the Bachman would speak about it?
Oh, Nachvi. I mean, it wasn't a deadly thing, but there were many of us, some, for that reason, how can we bring the Rebbe? Because Shlomo Chaim never addressed it. It was like, he would address come to the Rebbe about wie mit Afsachmechas against the Rebbe.
You tell the Bachman?
Yes, either, by a farbrengs or, alone. And Bachman was to go to Rebbe Chaim to talk to Rebbe Chaim, Bachar himself, primus dike, that was a regular. But Akalpanim, only after the Yigas came out, okay, and you see the letters, okay. You don't see Rosh Chaim's letters, although some of them now we do have, okay, but the Rebbe's letters to him, no, you can't come, no, you can't come, no, you can't come, and that, as a tzchibet noch anand, to be able to come, and the Rebbe didn't let him. And never a word.
He never defended himself?
Never defended himself.
And I heard when he came, Yud Shalom, and there was a tabling afterwards.
Nissen and Chaim and Ben said that was the three.
And Shlomo Chaim was apparently talking very strong words of the Skashrus and Alva to the Rebbe that night. You were there?
No.
I heard about it, I don't know.
Yep.
But where were you, Yud Shalom?
I was at Chabad.
Oh, you were at Chabad. Okay. Uh-huh. Okay.
That I can't get over.
You can't get over that you missed it.
Yes.
Did you go? Did you stay there for 2 years, or you came back and forth?
No, I did not come back.
You came for 2 years. You were there 2 years straight.
Well, a year and a half. Yeah. So didn't have money. I mean, it was like plain and simple. It was I've asked my parents didn't have money. It wasn't.
Okay, so we got one full regret that you missed the Yud Shalom.
More than one, but yes, that's a definite.
One of the integral components of being a chassid are the Chassidish Yomim Tovim and Yom Pagra. Whether it's Hey Tevis, Yud Shvat, Yud Aleph Nissen, or Gimel Tammuz. These days give us an opportunity to connect with our Rabbeim, to connect with each other and be better Chassidim. What is the story behind each of these days? How did the Rebbe commemorate and celebrate these days? And most importantly, what are the lessons, the takeaways, and the action items Hamaisa Hua Ikr needed for each of these days? All of this and much, much more are answered in the new set recently published by Deren. Our Days is a journey through the Chabad calendar in story, meaning, and practice. With over 700 beautiful, glossy pages with elevated content, beautiful, beautiful photographs, you, your family, and friends will enjoy and live with each Chassidish Yom Tiv. This book is a must for every Lubavitcher home, for every shul, for every school. It is a perfect gift item. This will not collect dust. It will be used day after day, month after month, year after year. You can have this set. Go to derher.org/Our Days. Order your set today and start living with the Chassidish Yom Tov. So after a year and a half, so you decided to go back to 770. You asked the Rebbe, what was that?
Well, first of all, Rebbe Chaim was niftar.
While you were there?
Yeah. I think either Lag Baimer or the day after Lag Baimer. He was Chassidish test. No, probably test. Lag Baimer can't come on a Friday, right? I'm not going to figure it out now. Yeah, so I came back to 770. Actually, my sister was getting married then also.
You asked the Rebbe about it?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
You wouldn't get on an airplane to go to or from Eretz Yisrael in those days without asking the Rebbe first, or over the ocean. It's not so of course. And it was good to come back to learn. Actually, it was. I didn't know it at the time. It was actually to get married.
So your sister was getting married?
Right.
Yeah.
That was the ostensible reason.
So then you wanted to move over to 770 to learn the same thing.
Yes.
And you're saying that ended up becoming a shidduch. Okay, so the tale, what happened?
What happened was I met my future wife.
So what happened?
There was such a shidduch was proposed, and the Rebbe pushed it very strongly.
What do you mean the Rebbe pushed it?
That it should happen as quickly as possible.
So can you elaborate what happened?
Yes, the first time it was proposed, the Rebbe said, I was still not Yisrael.
Who proposed? Who proposed?
I don't remember exactly who was the first one that brought it to the Rebbe, but it was brought to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe was very much in favor of it, and to the point that they should send somebody to Eretz Yisrael, or find somebody that could talk to me in Eretz Yisrael and ask me if I wanted to get married.
So while you were Bachar in Eretz Yisrael,
At the age of 19.
at 19,
Yeah.
the Rebbe is sending, who did the Rebbe tell us to?
Probably my parents, I imagine it was my parents.
To send someone to Eretz Yisrael. So the Rebbe was pushing for the shidduch.
Yeah, and so it was actually my aunt who was in Eretz Yisrael then. So she asked me if I wanted to get married. So I thought she was like, it was very clear that it should not be coming from him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, shouldn't say, just to ask the question. So I gave the answer, no, not no, Grace Aleph, but no, with a question, are you out of your mind? I'm 19 years old. No, I don't want to get married.
It wasn't common to get married early then?
No, I didn't know anyone in Elam Haza who would get married that early.
Right.
Anyways, no, it just answered, well, obviously was no one, but now that it was coming back, so the Rebbe brought it up again. And
Did that brought up to you in Yechidus?
not to me, no, to my parents. And my mother said to the Rebbe, I will not learn. It was like, so I'm 20, but I was like, a bit like this with his hand. I'd learn enough chasana. I said, that's not a reason. I'd learn enough chasana. So, we got married.
So I have a question. This is something to do with you, something to do with your wife, do you know? Do you understand? Any understanding? Das Tachten, do you understand? What was going on here?
Das Tachten, I have no understanding whatsoever of why. Other than, well, it was too early. I do understand from a very, very balabatish perspective, which was, while I may have been far younger than the common age, my wife was not younger than the common age. My wife was already in the age of Shidduchim.
She's the same age as you?
She is a little bit younger than me. Less than a year. But so for her, 19 years old is very common then.
Yeah.
So I guess they never wanted this Shidduch, so that's why there's no reason to wait.
So you didn't really learn this on 70?
I did manage to get at least a little bit that, so we don't have to make the chasana right away, so I got to push the chasana off till Avodah. This was Sivan Tammuz. It was Tammuz already, and so I got to push off I got to push it off, so I at least tried to be able to much smicha before it.
You asked the Rebbe this thing, but learning smicha before.
I don't remember if I asked the Rebbe or if my parents asked the Rebbe. I do remember though that was the.
So when you but by the time you went out,
since I was learning for smicha, so there was no one in the Zal learning that, so I asked him just to sit in the kedel with my shwager, and I learned there.
But so by the time you met your wife, like for shidduchim,
yeah,
maybe you obviously knew her before because she's your relative, but you knew then that the Rebbe was pushing it.
Not. I knew that the Rebbe knew of it. I did not know that the Rebbe was pushing it, and I assume that I didn't hear it exactly. I've never asked my parents for something like that, but my assumption is that even then the Rebbe didn't want me to know that that he is. The Rebbe said to my father, to my parents, that they should talk to me right away. I was coming off, right? So they should talk to me right away. What? Yeah, somebody will also grab me for something. So, the Rebbe said, Ich meine nicht heim bei Nacht. I don't mean right away tonight. We can find this morning in the day. You can wait till tomorrow morning.
So it was urgent.
As far as it was concerned. Actually, my father told me later that actually somebody came over to him that morning, after that day, in 770, and wanted to know if he could talk to my father.
So, okay, so the Rebbe behind the scenes is pushing the shidduch. So you got married, you were 20 when you were married. So I guess they convinced you.
No. I mean, they didn't convince me. I could say the moment I knew that the Rebbe knew about it, that they're asking me, that it didn't have to be that the Rebbe was pushing it. That was enough. The Rebbe knew about it. Obviously, it's not like the issue of whether or not I should get married is not a question now anymore. And the only thing left me, Kalemish, is who to marry. And here's a suggestion. Actually, the Rebbe didn't say. The mother said, okay, so we'll make it done. When the Rebbe was brought it up again the second time, that, all right, so there was it should be my decision. In other words.
So the Shlichus is that someone mentioned it to the Rebbe. That's how it started, right?
It means that Rebbe, I think you should. I don't think there ever was a situation like that.
Right. Okay. Someone mentioned it. I just interviewed.
Every one of them is Tzoim. Yeah. As a result of someone mentioning it.
Right. So you got married. Where did you get married?
We got married in Nashville.
In Nashville.
I married in Nashville, and then I was in Kailul for 2 years. When I left Kailul after 2 years, I was still the youngest one in the Kailul. And then we wrote to the Rebbe. No. I went into Yechidus. And asked the Rebbe, and told her we were running to the Rebbe, we wanted the Rebbe should send us a Shlichus. So the Rebbe said that we should go into Merkez.
This is the Yechidus. What Yechidus is?
Yechidus from it was after 2 years in Kailul, towards the end of 2 years in Kailul.
Like a birthday Yechidus?
Yeah.
You went with your wife? Is that work?
Yeah. And we should.
You didn't have children yet.
No, we had Yossi already.
Yes. Okay.
And
So Yossi was with you in Yechidus?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to Yechidus. So they were saying we should go to Merkez.
You wrote into the Rebbe about Shlichus?
Yeah, we asked.
They don't.
We asked the Rebbe should send us. We wanted the Rebbe should send us a Shlichus.
One second. Pause for a second.
Yes.
People were going to Shlichus then?
Everybody.
People.
There was people.
That was the thing. People were going to Shlichus those days. But you're talking about Tavshalam the base? The Gimel.
But the Rebbe didn't send any Shlichus.
There was like a Chiddush? Or was
the people were going on Shlichus to other Shluchim. But Shlichus to the Rebbe, the Merkez would send, we finished with Merkez. Merkez would send the Shliach that stopped.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you asked the Rebbe said,
They were sent to go to Merkez, not scarce to Merkez. It was the same person, but they done B'chlal, sollte sein, als sein gut begashmius. Hagam ist ruchni sidrike. Aber als es gut begashmius, hat man a cup of ruchnius. You should see that it should be good, even materially good as well, and it's comfortable. Even though ruchnius, okay, the spiritual place you're at is the main thing. But when you're in a comfortable place materially, you have a head for spiritual things.
So the Rebbe saying that the Shlichus should be a gashmistic, a good Shlichus? What's the Rebbe saying?
It would seem so, yeah, that the Shlichus should be under terms that are good, but that are comfortable. My wife, when she heard that, was devastated. What does the Rebbe want from us? And we should be thinking about Gashmias. And she took it, Mamish is Agzerim Omayla, that came on her for. I went from Yechidus straight into Rebbe Chadikov. Well, I don't mean literally the minute, but that's at night. And my wife was walking up and down on the Eastern Parkway with the stroller and trying to come to terms with this terrible Zera. She hoped that maybe after 10 years, the Rebbe will call us in and say, "No, I Rabbi Zera, you don't have to have good Gashmis anymore." So we went to Chadikov, and Chadikov was Metzia, certain place, Amherst, actually. So I said, "Okay, we're going."
Amherst, Massachusetts.
Yeah. So I said, "Okay, yeah." So he smiles. He understood, where my yes came from. If you got a hatzah from Chadikov, you don't say, "I want to think about it," or "I want to talk it over." So he said, "No, nicht das geht. I'm not asking you for an answer. What I'm asking you is to take this. I'm giving this to you as a hatzah, a suggestion, but there may be other suggestions out there. So get them as well. And then write them in, and the Rebbe will decide where. And it was him to write them in. Okay, so I sort of let it be known that we were open for suggestions. I think we got 13 or 14 different Hatzahs of Shlichus from literally all over the world. Friends, from Australia, and America, many. So we made the whole list, and I wrote them into the Rebbe. Obviously, the Amherst was at the top of the list.
You wrote that Rebbe Chanukah said Amherst?
Yeah, for sure. I said it from America's yard. And the Rebbe answered that the Seder now is that you pick b'makom sheli b'chafetz, and since v'yishana odom b'nei mitech banav, so if I don't do it, so therefore I don't pick where you want to go. Benjamin called me up and said, "It's a beautiful answer from the Rebbe." And I come to 770 and he shows me the answer. And I wanted to what? And we asked the Rebbe something. The Rebbe said to go to Chadakov. Chadakov said, told us what that says. Now they're just saying we should decide what. And Benjamin sees that I'm not happy. So, do you see what's going on here? The Rebbe ruft dir seine Makin. The Rebbe's calling you B'nai. And what, like, the Rebbe's calling you B'nai. And I said to him, the Rebbe's calling me B'nai, the Rebbe's not calling me. I want the Rebbe to tell us where to go in Shlichus. Well, I want to pick what I know where my Shlichus is. But what am I going to do? But my wife was like, now is this, not one Zera, but not a second Zera. So my wife wrote to the Rebbe basically with this, what we should pick.
One second, I think that the Rebbe did choose the people, right? Yeah.
Not at that time, no.
Yeah, he didn't, okay.
Look, the Rebbe said he didn't, okay? You asked me if I'm keeping a cheshbon of...
Okay.
So my wife wrote them, basically, we don't know where to go in Shlichus. We want to go in Shlichus. The Rebbe wants us to go where the Rebbe is sending us, not. The Rebbe answered her that I should send in the list again. So I sent the list in again. So the Rebbe circled 3 places. He said I should find out more pratim about these 3 places. One of them was, actually, of course, Amherst, and 2 other places. I should find out more about these places, pros and cons or whatever. More pratim, is it more pratim in these places, and to send it in. So I did, sent it in, and it came back to Amherst, obviously. So that's how we got to Amherst. And the surrounding area was Amherst and surrounding areas.
So what was Shlichus like? Touch on Gimel.
Well, let me tell you how it starts. So you come to Amherst for the first time. Mamish to see the place, and you have to talk to people. So you talk to, there was something called the Amherst Jewish community at the time. The Amherst then, even still now, is just a college town. Amherst has like 5 colleges, 3 in Amherst and another 2 in adjacent towns. And so the Jewish community was just basically professors, teachers, professors, people that are connected to them. And I made an appointment with the president of the Amherst Jewish community. And I come in and I explain Chabad house and we want to, and, could you give me some advice, how to, you're here, My advice is you should go back to Brooklyn. That was my welcome to Amherst. It wasn't easy. But I didn't come by myself, or my wife and I didn't come by ourselves, we came with the Rebbe. And we had Atzlacha in ways that were like the mile of the Kafiyah Moshiach. It was like just even we rented a house right next to the campus. It was more of a bungalow than a house. The front was one big room that was the kitchen and the living room and the dining room and my office and the shul, and this is all one not very big room. And then 2 bedrooms behind the half a wall. So that was that was the first we rented. But then we found, and with the Rebbe's brachas, that was the way of saying a beautiful building, house, like literally on the campus, surrounded on 3 sides. And within less than a year, we were able to buy it. We got Baruch Hashem. And it was never easy. I can't say, I'm not quite sure what Gashminis the Rebbe wanted us to have, but the way it's conventionally defined, I can't say we had a lot of it in Amherst. On the other hand, there's no place to raise money from in Amherst because there's no community to speak of, no Jewish community. So we had to go, it was always a struggle getting kids into the Chabad house. In those days, the Chabad house was a minyan, that's the first and foremost. Okay, obviously a minyan Shabbos, Friday night Shabbos. And but during the week also, it's like a minyan, it's like, so at the beginning we had Monday and Thursday was...
you looked at a Chabad house as like you have to make a show, you have to make a minyan.
Yeah, not just the minyan. Okay, obviously the meals and the classes and the programs and other programs. There weren't a lot of programs. I mean, like generally the Purim theme, for instance, a Purim thing. The Purim theme was generally Purim. But we had Baruch Hashem. I'm going next week to a chasana of someone whose father became the scarf in Amherst, and whose mother became the scarf in Amherst. And he's a bacher today. I mean, not the first in his family. I'm going next week, and he's marrying, of course, into one of the quote blue-blooded families of Chabad, and it's Shluchim. I'm sure he'll be on Shlichus, as his older siblings are. Most of his older siblings are. And so we definitely...
The Ruchnis you definitely saw.
We continue to see. But Gashmis, we always had what to eat. We didn't necessarily always have the money with which to buy it, but ultimately it got to the table.
So what I'm saying, this is a general question also about your later Shlichus. What was the attitude? The attitude was, I feel like today people are...
In my kita, not everybody went to Shlichus.
I'm talking about the money part.
Okay.
That was my question.
I'm sorry, what do you mean?
What was the attitude of... Today, I feel like people are much more like, you have to raise, you have to spend according to what you have. It seems like then the whole thing was l'mayla derech hatava, like there's no was that the design?
Before I could go to Amherst, Rebbe Chadakov wanted signed commitments from 3 or 5 balabatim that they would help support it. There wasn't with money amounts, but they would support it. He wanted signed commitments. So I had to go find 5 balabatim. I have to mention David Edelman, who was in Springfield at the time, who was more than helpful. He himself used to give shiurim in Amherst from time to time, and so that was the connection. And his Adam, his Almadai Shalom, was very much involved in getting this going. He helped us tremendously. he was the one who came to Rabbi Chadakov, asking Rabbi Chadakov if they should send somebody. Okay, so he was, and he was, obviously he was important. But there was not enough. Chadakov wanted to have five, I think it was 5 or 4, whatever. No, so I had to go to them. These are people that, Rabbi, I can make this commitment. I said, I'm not asking for any money amount. I'm just asking to sign a piece of paper that you're going to help. and he accepted the commitments, as it were. And I was right in terms of how much to expect from them. And so it wasn't, but it was supposed to be on a basis of reality, as it were, of not just Parechas Ba'avir, but no, we started with very little in terms of practically knowing where a salary is going to come from. Chadakov gave me a good piece of advice of how to raise the money, which was that I should, since I'm a Shlich of Americas, so I get 50% discounts from what I'm buying from Americas, that I should sell subscriptions to Talks and Tales and Shmus, and half of the money will go to me. So like it's $1.20 a year it costs them or something like that, or maybe it's $2.40 a year, and I can get for each subscription I get $1.20. So I have to sell 10,000 subscriptions of Talks and Tales, and I'm on the easy street.
You can't find 10,000 people, to be honest. But my question is, ultimately, looking back at, this is over 50 years ago, yeah?
Shnas HaChinuch, which year was Shnas
HaChinuch?
Love. So Shnas HaChinuch, among the things that Rebbe said, was to make camps, also camp. Or maybe it was a separate thing about camps. Somehow it's in my head that it was Keshet Shnas HaChinuch. And so we wanted to open a day camp. And we wrote to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, "B'tnai sheyesh maman l'zeh."
So they want money for it.
There's to be money for it. Okay, for me, money for it means there is money for it. It's not in my account, but the money is there. It's in the bank, and so we opened the camp.
So you did a camp.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
So that's my question. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
No, there was no money for it, and yes, I was left with Chayvus at the end of camp. Okay, and you know what there was then that there is now? The Hasagas. The notion to go in to ask a balabas for $1 million did not exist. It was, it existed, but not this. There's no such thing. And so it was. And now again, I'm talking about myself, and I can't extrapolate from there to everyone else. But the notion that you can do big things. When looking around at other shluchim that preceded me, I didn't see it so vividly. There was one Shlema Kunyan, but I can't become a Shlema Kunyan. That was not my speed, and it wasn't just a question of my speed. It's like he is l'mayla b'derech hateva, but b'derech hateva, it's. The Rebbe was screaming, and we were still, and it took a while till our eyes opened up to realize what the Rebbe's, not just what the Rebbe's asking from us, what the Rebbe's prepared to give us.
But you felt during your years of Shlichus that you have a mandate to go and do more than you can, way beyond what you think you can do. And that was clear to you always.
Yeah.
And that's what you did.
Yes. When I'm buying the Chabad house, okay, it's taka true. We got the down payment.
Right.
But or maybe even the mortgage, I knew that was going to be covered. So it was that part. But for me, just the undertaking such a kind of thing was beyond me. But the Rebbe said, gave him but even okay, but Bashamayim is a whole other kind of thing. And it's true. Kalev told the Meisher Rebbe says, you know, Nala Besulamis Hashemayim, we'll go there. Okay, if he tells us to, and the Rebbe was telling us to.
So this was
we just didn't realize that Rebbe actually meant it, that we could actually do it.
You could, right.
Yeah, that we can actually do it.
But this was the tenua amongst shluchim at that time, that, you know...
The going on Shlichus was still, the etzem going on Shlichus was a l'chatchila Rebbe. It was not the default position. But yes, I grew up, it was the default position. It was never a question by me. But that many of my classmates did not, was not, and why? Because I heard it from more than one. I couldn't do what you're doing. I couldn't do it. It's too much. How do you do it? How do you know where anything's going to come from? So, and then that was a l'chatchila Rebbe in a very real way compared to what the atmosphere at the time was. Today, Baruch Hashem, something has to be matter not to go on Shlichus, okay? Everybody, obviously, some that can't, but it's certainly, it's not, wow, he's going on Shlichus. It's, yes, he's going on Shlichus. Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem is gesund, okay? But it's, today, the Chatchila Rebbe means $1 million building. What are you, crazy? Okay.
20 million.
At least.
Did you ever write to the Rebbe about the hardships, the financial hardships, and the shlichus and the chayvus and things, and you never complained to the Rebbe about it?
Never.
Why?
What for? But why would I complain to the Rebbe about it? If there's claim to the Rebbe, I'm complaining that I'm not doing my job. The Rebbe said it should be good begashmias. I'm going to write to the Rebbe it's not good begashmias. Hello. Of course, it's good. The only problem is I'm not doing everything I need to do. I'm not working the way I should be working. I was on a podcast once, not a year ago. This is not my first podcast. And the person asked me about Amherst and said, we moved from Amherst eventually to Stamford. And he asked me, do I feel that I was successful during the 15 years that I was in Amherst? So I said, no. So he said, why not? Because Moshiach didn't come. If I was successful, Moshiach would have come. So why didn't Moshiach come? Because Moshiach doesn't want to come. Moshiach doesn't come because we're not doing everything that we needed to bring him. And if I was, then he would be here. And that was success. So it's complaining I don't have money is almost like, hello Rebbe, you sent me on Shlichus, but I'm doing my Shlichus, can you help me here? That was not a letter I was going to write. Ver'ednish the Agmas Nefesh that something like that could make.
Okay.
And I'm not going to say that it didn't kvetch. Of course it kvetches, okay? But it wasn't unusual. I didn't think it was an unusual thing that needed, that's part of Golos, it's not something
wrong.
It's not something wrong, and it's not something, I never for a second questioned, should I really be on Shlichus? Like, maybe this isn't for me. Like, that was like, maybe I shouldn't be a human being. Maybe I should become an airplane. This is who I am. A shliach. I hope that I have given my children some of that, because I didn't make it up myself. I got it from my parents, from my grandparents. I always sort of read the Alter Rebbe as saying, this is what I want you to be. It's, What's a shliach ultimately? What a shliach is called kulei, is the eisfer in the Rebbe's ratzon. The Rebbe's ratzon is called kulei, eisfer in the Rebbe's ratzon. Now, what's Yiddishkeit if not those two things? Well, you don't have to be called kulei, or it doesn't have to be called kulei in a revealed way. Yeah, you could be a baleisik and also call kulei doing what Rebbe doing. Rebbe needs baleisik, okay? But it's like there's one step removed. The business itself is not the shlichus, okay? The business is the means to be able to get the tzedakah to give to the mason that there's actually the whole, or it's to give you, so you should be able to have 2 days a week off to usual whatever. But the ASIC is not the shlichus per se. But here you have the opportunity, and they should that I can be the Rebbe shliach. In other words, I don't want to use the word k'maiseh, obviously, in the sense, anything more than the very narrow sense that I'm saying it is. In other words, that the things I'm doing are k'maiseh, should be k'maiseh. In other words, what the Rebbe is doing it. That understanding, and that means living the kind of life that the kids sung, okay, Rebbe, I know when they're looking at me, it's you that they see. That's what Shlichus is. You're representing the Rebbe. The awesomeness, in the frightful sense of the word, is overwhelming on the one hand, and on the other, and the responsibility that carries with it. But that quote is the job description of being a Shliach. Acting and living that way.
Okay.
Does it come with hardships? Yeah, there may be some kind of hardships, but you know what? This is goals. Not therefore change your job.
Okay, so
having said that,
yeah,
I don't want anybody to be left with the impression that that's what Shlichus was, hardships. On the contrary, I can say, I think Baruch Hashem, the Zolzayin Gut Begashmias, we've reached a place where Baruch Hashem, it's good Begashmias. I mean, there aren't the challenges and difficulties, okay? But my worries are, I've reached a stage, what the Rebbe said, as is good Begashmias, what does that mean? Instead of worrying about Gashmias, you could be worrying about ruchnistic things. So Baruch Hashem, I can worry about ruchnistic things. There are plenty to worry there, okay? But can focus on that because there isn't a gashmistic worry that is.
You're saying this is not a mitzvah, but
it's quote not a mitzvah, and it's not talking about luxus. We're not talking about being able to take a couple of months a year off in St. Thomas.
I'm saying it shouldn't be that bezucht this Mesiras Nefesh. This is.
No. And Baruch Hashem, today, it's one thing that has changed dramatically, I think, is of course the general gashmistic matzav of shluchim today is not. I know there are many that are still struggling, in terms of paying the mortgage and things like that. But it's not a standard. Once upon a time, it was a standard. It was like that. Oh, thank God, it's a holiday, so the bank's closed. You don't hear that as Baruch Hashem as much. It's push. I guess after Gimel Tammuz, whoever it was that was holding that handle, to keep from the flow of Ruchnis be turning into Gashmis the way it's supposed to be. Whoever is holding that handle can't hold it that hard because the Rebbe is there and it makes sure it's turned the other way. Baruch Hashem, you get even more than we deserve.
Okay, Halavaya, alle
gesagt.
Okay, so let's go back to the story a little bit. So you were in Amherst. You're also in Springfield at some point.
Yeah, Springfield. Our children went to school in Springfield, so that was we obviously commuted
How far is it?
About 45 minutes. 45
So at the point you're living in Springfield, but
what happened was, at one point, my wife was also teaching and then became assistant principal of the school in Springfield. So it just made more sense for me to commute, than for my wife and children to commute. So we moved to Springfield, and I would go every day to Amherst, and every Shabbos, we'd go to Amherst and move in for Shabbos and Yom Tov, things of that sort. There was also at one point that there was a teacher's strike in Springfield. So I came up with the idea of pushing kids into the yeshiva, because we were able to get quite a few kids into the day school in Springfield. And once the strike was over, many of the kids, unfortunately, went back to public school, but we had a connection to them. So we said, well, let's make a Hebrew school, and we did. And so I made the Hebrew school there, and it was very successful.
In Amherst?
No, in Springfield. And it was Baruch Hashem. It was so successful. The Chazan in the conservative temple tells me a story that one of the women there came over to him and was telling him, my children, they love Hebrew school. Oh, they finally, it was so good, they love Hebrew school. So I said, okay, well, look, you're sending them to Chabad. No, we're here at the Temple's Hebrew School. People understood, that if it's a good Hebrew school, it means we're talking about the Chabad Hebrew School.
So you're the first one that started it. I think it's that standard today. So how do you end up? What was the move to Stamford?
That's how it went, because we just
to Stamford.
We're up. Oh, to Stamford. I'm sorry. Actually, one of the shluchim that I brought to Amherst after 2 years, and it was to expand it, or he wanted to place himself in the subject came up of maybe to open a Chabad house and move in Hartford. And when the question came to the Rebbe, said that I should, since Connecticut is my responsibility.
You knew that Connecticut was your responsibility?
What happened was, I learned it was my responsibility, actually, because I would get telephone calls from Rebbe from time to time about situations that are in Connecticut if I can see to take care of. And then when the question came up of moving to Hartford, so after whatever Rabbi Deren says, so it's my responsibility. So obviously he did, and it's Baruch Hashem today. A very, very successful shliach with many shluchim that he himself has brought in the Chabad houses, that he himself has, Chabad centers that he himself has opened. I'm not his boss. I'm his colleague. Okay, but in any case, at one point, I got a telephone call from Rebbe, and this was about a situation in Stamford. And I should see to take care of it. And this was a biggie, and I have to deal with the rabbi. So I asked the Rebbe if we should open maybe a Chabad house in Stamford, which was the only city at the time, big city that had no Chabad center. Well, actually, we're saying Chabad in Hartford. Of course, Nahaven was the yeshiva there. Was there. In Stamford, there was nothing. There never had been anything of Chabad. So I asked the Rebbe said it's Shaykh to Merkaz Lianei Chinuch. So I called up, I called the Rebbe Chotekov. So he said to call me back in a couple of days. I don't remember what it was. I made up to come to him in a couple of days. Yeah, because I remember I was still in his office. And I came in and he read me from a zettel about several things. And then he said, in terms of whether you should, what needs to be done there, and whether or not you should go, or you should open. That's what I said. The question was, should I open a Chabad center, or should I bring somebody else to open a Chabad center? I should go and bring somebody else to Amherst, or I should
bring somebody to Stanford.
Or bring somebody to Stanford. So he said, that question we are leaving up to you. He wouldn't give me the title. I just, So I understood that the way I read it was that I should, but they was going to tell me to move to Stamford. I should tell me to move from one place to another. That we'll leave to you. But the highest for Stamford is for yours, and you make the decision. I read it as understanding. I understood it as I should move to Stamford and to bring another shliach to take my places.
I know of other stories of other shluchim that had similar things, that they were in one place, but they have a big jurisdiction. So then they started for a few years working in this place, I don't know if it's always moving, but like they're being piled in different parts of their jurisdiction. This is something that other people have also. So that's,
but it was very much quote. It's coming. Not a word about the Rebbe said. It was like the closest I got of Rebbe was, "We are leaving." Okay, mir lozen. I'm sure the Rebbe wasn't referring to Binyamin and.
Right. So then you wrote to the Rebbe a decision that you want to move to Stanford.
An interesting thing is, when I wrote this, and then I said to check with Tzach also, to make sure Tzach doesn't have any problems, because across the board. Actually, when I went to Rebbe David, he didn't understand it. Like, of course not, why should I? But I learned that Asaka school is something that the Rebbe is like, mit alle Sachen, we're sending him, but make sure that Tzach is not.
So the Rebbe said to check with Tzach. So check with the
check with Tzach, of course.
Right, it's right next to Westchester, which is Tzach.
We're not even there yet. Nothing was there, but yeah, sufficient Tzach, yeah.
New York is Tzach.
Yes.
There was no Shliach in Westchester at the time?
Yeah.
So it says Memches?
Yeah.
So you moved there Memches. And
it's an interesting thing we're talking about the Hasogas and how you look in the Rebbe. So during this period when we were moving, until we got a place in the Cholim, there was a Sikha Beis year that I was listening on a tape because I wasn't there. And I was listening on tape on the way from Stamford to Springfield. The Rebbe was talking about, one of the things the Rebbe said, as the Rebbe was talking about peril, but after living in peril, often howls and peril and so. Okay, the peril, when you're talking about pearls, we're talking about not pearl barley, but pearls on a necklace. And that's the definition of a pearl. So, and that looks like, and I felt it like here we're going in a really big way.
What do you mean?
And then we should start thinking of different kinds of us.
So you say here in Stanford.
We're going to start doing it. It's much bigger.
And that's not going to what happened.
It had to happen. What we paid for our house in Stamford was 3 times how much we paid for the Chabad house in Amherst. 3 times as much. I was like, for what we paid for the Chabad house in Amherst, which at the time I thought was hard to get a garage here in Stamford. And, Baruch Hashem, actually, and I saw, I had to get a mortgage, right? When we bought our house, we had to get a mortgage. Baruch Hashem, for what we had our house in Springfield, we were able to, for a down payment, but that was a down payment. I didn't have a mortgage. Where did I get a mortgage from? At that time, it was hard for me to get a credit card, with my stellar rating. And somebody told me that there's a bank that has a Jew, president's a Jewish guy, and it's owned by a Jew. President Jew. Go in there, maybe it'll help. Maybe this is after 2 places, mortgage brokers, I don't think this is what we're looking for. Anyway, so I walk into the bank. This was during the time for the elections in Eretz Yisrael, Moshiach.
Yeah.
And it was on the newspapers.
They're at the top of the government.
They're at the top of the government. So I come into the bank, and as I went to meet with the president, he sits down, and I start telling him what we want to do. It's a Chabad center, Lubavitch. Oh, Lubavitch, I see you guys on television all the time. I see the Rebbe on television no problem. You know what? Don't even bother with the applications. As soon as you have what you need, okay, in terms of from the whatever, just come in here, okay? I'll take care of it. And on my signature, he gave me the when it came to building our building, and they were not talking about $250,000. They were talking about $3.5 million on my signature.
Same guy.
Same guy on my signature. And that was like But
that was a thing here.
Clear. And ultimately, he sold the bank, and I shouldn't stop, but it was like, for anybody listening to this wants to know the name of the bank, sorry, it's already been sold, and the bank that was sold has already been sold, so it's gone.
That's right.
But the brachas haven't left, Chas v'shalom. They keep coming.
And I know also when you were in Stamford, you're physically in closer proximity to New York. I know you brought people dollars, common.
Absolutely.
I know I meet people here that tell me that they regret they didn't listen and go with you, that they had the opportunity, they didn't, but there are many people that did.
There are, and brachas came along with it, and it's so close. Unfortunately, whatever. Sometimes I feel guilty how close it is. It was the closest in Amherst. The closest I was feeling close was that Matzah Simchas Torah. I could get there in time for Kaishu Bracha. And if it was a very long farbrengs, it was sometimes to the end of it. But that's the most I would have from, other than of Tishrei, that I would have from Tishrei. And even that felt guilty like, but I was always by Kaishu Bracha, Simchas Torah. And then obviously coming for Shabbos was a possibility. That wasn't as easy when you're further away. So, during the week.
And over the years, were there heroes that you got when you get the Shlichus that you, like, how did it work? There was like, do you ask to have like major questions? You spoke about Chanukah, like how was what was the saying there when you were trying to figure out what to do?
Yeah, generally major questions. Should we buy a new building? Should we bring another shliach? Should we go to the Rebbe? And lesser issues would be to Rebbe Chatakov. What in my mind is less and not lesser. On the other hand, right at the very beginning, it wasn't long after we moved to Amherst, and Rebbe Chatakov was insistent I write a duch. Not of days, but of hours. Not what I'm doing this day or this week, but certainly at the beginning, I was careful about it. But later it became an issue about Tivish Tzimur, and then one of our children was not well and had to be in the hospital. Some kind of respiratory infection. Nothing. But pencil, I couldn't be alone in the hospital. We had a baby at home. So it would mean that I had to be in the hospital or at home, and it was going to be, the duch wasn't going to be talking about the next week's duch is going to have, big blank spaces there. So I wanted to call up to explain the blank spaces before they happened. So I called him Rechadikov, and I told him So then there's quiet. Rav says, es ist a sichere Sach, der Kind ist nicht geworden, nicht gesund, kedei du sollst sagen, Magnus Nefesh. It's definite that it's the reason that your child is not well or became unwell, and it has to be in the hospital so that you should have pain and anguish. That's not the reason. The only reason could be why it is because you have a Shlichus in the hospital. So go find it and do it. That was officially from Chatikov, but the pause gave me on the phone. As far as I'm concerned, it came from the Rebbe directly, and it was stuff that doesn't happen bad. So things should be bad. The only reason stuff happens that looks bad is because your Shlichus is in a place that otherwise you wouldn't be, because other than this, but you're there for this, not so that it should be bad.
Is this something that you thought about later on when there were other hardships?
Constantly. And not even just of the hospital kind, which unfortunately there were so many of those kind. But when our Shlomi was not well, and in the hospital, it was in Sloan Kettering, 6 or something. And for some reason, my wife mentioned that she was going to call Abba, to get a bracha from the Rebbe before, maybe it was before procedure or something. So he looks at me and says, I'm not the only one that needs a bracha from the Rebbe. All of the other children on the floor need. Get their names and ask for a bracha from them as well. I don't think he was 6 yet. Maybe he was already 6. Okay, but was nice to. I'm not here to everybody here needs a bracha. Not just Yiddish Kinderlach need brachas. Not Yiddish Kinderlach also need brachas. That was his. But it's. Do I say that that's what pops into my mind the first thing when a challenge arises? I wish it was. But when I start this, why is God picking on me about whatever it is that's happening? I realize that's not exactly what you heard. What you heard is, why did God pick you? Okay. In other words, he picked you because it's your shlichus. Now go do it. Go find it and do it. So obviously it's not, a shlichus is necessarily obvious.
Okay. I think with that note, we have what to work with.
Well, I hope that you have with what to also relax with. Because I'm not meant, nothing I said was meant to make anybody feel guilty. It was meant to make people feel how good that they are and how much better all of us can be.
Okay, I actually have one question before we finish. So you're talking about Tav Shalom and Gimel, right? For over 50 years, the year on Shlichus. How do you perceive?
No, it was Tav Shalom. We were indicated this is Tav Shalom Dalet.
Still over 50 years. I mean, not many people have experienced the whole. I mean, that's not the Shlichus started in the Yuds, but you're seeing it, from a when you look at it from like a helicopter view over the last 50 years. How have you seen the progression, or where it's going? Like, what's your take on the whole, on the Rebbe's work?
Some years ago, our Gan was picked together with another 11 from the entire country, a cohort that there was an organization that put in resources into all of these Ganim, nurseries in preschools in the hope that they would become centers of excellence for others to emulate, as well as to act as a springboard that would bring more families into the Jewish community as a whole, recognizing that after college, the next place you can more easily reach young people, young Jews, is when they start having children and they need a place to. And we were one of those that were picked as at the beginning. I heard this was $10 million initiative, and 10 got it originally. So I figured, I'm going to be $1 million. It wasn't to give out money. There was a couple of subsidies for particular programs, but mainly resources. They would bring people in. And there was one woman that oversaw our gun. She would come and meet with the whole staff. And because the gun was is so integrated with Chabad as a whole, was the whole Chabad staff. She was very much into how an organization should work well, and she did incredible work, both with us in general. After, she would come for 2 days each month, and after 2 days she would meet with me to go over what had. After, it was 2 years, I think. After the end of the 2 years, it was the last time it was coming. I said to her, Diana, maybe you want to come to the ale with us? And she said, sure. She had connections to Yiddishkeit, but nothing, not anyway from. But like she jumped, yes, of course. And so right away we got to the car, my wife and I, and we went to the ale. We had then a conversation. Now it's pure Chabad. I'm not talking anything. So she says to me, do you know what the problem with Chabad is? And I'm thinking, we don't have problems. The problem with Chabad is you're telling your kids the wrong stories. I'm thinking, what? With the wrong stories? What are you talking about? We tell stories that are pain. You're telling your kids stories of conquest, of taking over, which is absolutely necessary when you start, because you wanted to take over the whole world. You've taken over the whole world. There's not a place in the world where you aren't. You've taken over the whole world. There's not a significant challenge that you haven't faced and not overcome. Now, you need to start digging deeper. You don't need to tell stories. You need to tell stories about going deeper, not going broader, not going higher, deeper. Now's the time to motivate the next generation into changing people, bringing people closer. It's like you've done the quantity. Now's the time for the quality, which I thought was an incredible insight. And to come back to your question, yes, this is where we've changed. The going out on Shlichus, the first shluchim, the pioneers, the Kasher Mendels, the Shem Tov, the Nachman, the Zimov, they were going into a world that didn't want them and had to change that world. They changed it. This is no longer the world that doesn't want us. This is a world that is explicitly being tevea bepeh, come, we need you. We must have you. It's a whole different kind of going, okay? Today, shluchim are, as it were, metaphorically welcomed with open arms. And I feel that what has to happen, and it's beginning to happen, is Shlichus, the Eilam HaShlichus needs to understand now we need to go deeper. And we need to create things that whose quality is measured by their quality, not by their quantity, or not only by their quantity. So instead of to be the shliach that has the school with 200 kids or 500 kids or 50 Chabadas, and so it's the shliach that has reached and changed, changed 10 people, 15 people, 20 families, transformed them. There should be a shliach. I don't think a shliach is capable of truly having a pnimistic kesher, has the time for having a pnimistic kesher with more than 20 families, 50 families, 100 families. More than that, that's not realistic. And there needs to be a shliach for every 100 families. That's what now, I want a state, I want a country. Okay, the content is spoken for, but it needs to be, I want to make chassidim. I need to make chassidim. There are so many people that are not even considering themselves Eden. I need to make them Eden. And we need to tell those stories. People are intuitively picking that up already. I'm America with what I just said. But we need to focus on it.
I think at the core, that's what the Rebbe spoke about when he started the Shlichus.
Of course.
It's about dafke mechakim, not for one person. It's not about numbers. It was never about numbers.
Never.
That was the success of it.
Of course. Okay, but we need to realize that's the message that needs to resonate as that is what Shlichus is. We were thinking of Shlichus, we were thinking of, whoa, we're going to be dealing with that's Shlichus, which was what it had to be, because that's what had to happen first. Just to go with the numbers, we had to build the structure, okay, within which the structure is built. Now we need to focus on when the Rebbe said on a Shchedesh Adar or Parshas Shkolim, that we were talking about Mivtza Purim, and say Medaf der Griechen jeder Yidden in the Welt between Shabbos Shkolim and Purim is never less than 2 weeks or more than 2, whatever. It's 2 weeks. Never 3 weeks. Okay, and yet when we think about it, okay, so we're going to make a bigger party this year. Okay, bigger party. There is one, of course, a bigger party this year, and of course, sending out more shachmas this year, of course. But that's not what the Rebbe said. What the Rebbe said is everyone. That's what the Rebbe is looking for. And if he's told it to us, it's because we can. The Rebbe didn't speak stam lots of werte. The Rebbe means every single Yid. That's what Shlichus do. And every single Yid to look to echad.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rabbi Deren.
You're very, very welcome.